It's time to talk sports, it's time for the show. When you hear this song on the radio, it's time to tune in, better act fast. Let me get that Potograph, Sports Talk Radio. Starting now.
Let's go! What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 129 of Let Me Get That Potograph. As always, my name is Drew, or the DH, and we've got a great show for you today. We've got a returning guest, one of my favorites to have on the show. He's been on quite a few times. His hobby knowledge is second to none in this industry, and that, of course, is Just Collect and Vintage Breaks owner and founder Leighton Sheldon. Will be dropping by a little bit later to talk the hobby, a lot of stuff, whole bunch of different topics going on, so a lot to look forward to. Excellent interview, definitely stick around for that. It's going to be a great one. But we're going to start today's show up following up a little something we talked about last week. You know, we focused a lot on licensing and talked about its importance and how we thought it was going to be a free-for-all for these licenses and everything was kind of going to start to go a little crazy. Well, sure enough, this week, another major license has been locked down for quite some time, as Panini has struck a deal to re-sign the English Premier League, the EPL soccer, which is, as everyone knows, there's multiple different, soccer's an odd sport because there's so many different leagues, La Liga, EPL, then you've got your FIFA stuff, there's so many different leagues, Bundesliga, like they're just everywhere, that there's a lot of licenses to go around. But the EPL has always been one of the strongest. Go look at the big sales, go look at where a lot of the big players play, and a lot of them end up in the EPL at some point in time, or are there right now. So this was a very, very big grab right now, and they didn't waste any time. They snagged it up and they got it. The terms have not been disclosed, except that it is being reported that it's a multi-year deal and not a one-year deal like Topps recent acquisition when they re-upped with some of their soccer. So interesting that Panini got the multi-year deal out, and I'd like to see how long it's for. But this is huge. This is a massive license for Panini to get, as EPL, like I said, is one of the strongest selling brands and one of the strongest markets in terms of players, products, everything. And we'll be talking a lot more on the soccer market later on in the show today, but this is huge. And like I said, yet another license starting to fall. You are going to see licensing mayhem over the next couple months as people snag up everything they can. Topps looks to be getting into a lot more international stuff. I told you the European basketball leagues are coming. They are going to start happening, but these licensing deals are very important for these companies moving forward if they don't plan on being bought out by Fanatics and essentially giving Fanatics their name and just stepping to the side. If they want to continue on, use their blockchain, use their instant, use all the other platforms that they have, their stickers, everything along those lines, which Panini, a lot of people don't know, makes more money off their stickers than they do off anything. So Panini getting these licenses is just icing on the cake for them, and cards has always been icing on the cake for them, but it's a great and a massive source of revenue for them. So if they don't choose to, give that name to Fanatics essentially and want to continue on, these type of licenses are key. It's going to be interesting to see when this license ends and if it's right around when Fanatics starts. I'm really interested to see the terms, but Panini has locked down yet another strong one, grabbing WWE a couple weeks back, now grabbing the EPL, and keep being able to keep EPL, which is huge. With so many companies choosing to change brands and change organizations, being able to re-sign them for that multi-year deal is huge. As once again I said, they have one of the strongest markets and strongest selling brands in the entire soccer hobby. But we shall see what happens, but I'm really looking forward to a lot more years of Panini soccer, because I think Panini does soccer, just does an incredible job with soccer, and I think every year it keeps getting better. But we're going to move on now, guys, to some more news that happened this week, and it's news that everyone has been waiting for, or a lot of people have been waiting for. If you're someone into grading, you've been waiting for it to happen. PSA announcing that their regular service is returning. Now you'll have Super Express, and regular, as value and economy have still not come back, and it'll probably be next year before they do, but regular is coming back. Nat Turner made the announcement, funnily enough. I thought it was hilarious, and just a random Instagram reply. He said, yep, it'll be back in 2 weeks, and that was their announcement. I love how in tune Nat Turner is with the hobby, and how he'll just answer a random guy's question and give you the biggest news that PSA could give just on a random Instagram post, and then let it take it for itself. It's great. I love how Nat has handled everything since he's taken over at PSA compared to how it was run before. I think he's doing a phenomenal job. But regular does look to be returning in about 2 weeks, right around Turkey Day, which a couple weeks ago on the podcast, we said that regular would be returning probably around Thanksgiving, and then the other one's the New Year. So regular will be back. Now, rumor is, and these are rumors from people that have talked to some people at PSA and some reps and everything, rumor is that it's going to be $100 a card, so still pricey to get a card graded, but it's a significant, decrease. That $50 decrease, while it doesn't sound like a ton from Express to regular, that $50 price range opens up a floodgate and a massive window of cards that are deemed acceptable to send to PSA, that before you would just say, no, it's way too much, 150 way too much, but at 100, I can make it work. You can make profit on it. Not only does it give collectors a much better option, a cheaper option at $100 a card, it opens up for the people that are grading to sell a lot of cards that before have just been sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting. And now, while there's no price decrease right now, I do expect that around the holidays, around the New Year. I do expect a price decrease probably right around there, around when they open up yet another service, which will probably be, they'll probably do a January and a February rollout, and then everything will be open. And right now they say they are 100% complete through on their complete through dates on regular. So the turnaround time should be good. From what I'm hearing, again, from the same sources as before, is that it's going to be around 6 to 8 weeks for a turnaround time, which is not bad at all for a complete door-to-door process when you look at it from what it was before. Now the question is, can PSA handle the amount of cards that are about to come flooding through those gates? Because there are millions upon millions of cards, I know, just between walk-off card submissions and gem mint submissions, just between them alone, they have millions of cards that are prepped, ready, paperwork done, and everything to just literally drop off at PSA the second that regular is open. So millions of cards will be flooding in. So it's going to be the first time we've really gotten a chance to see Nat Turner's new operations. They've said they've changed the operations around. They've added new software they say they're not using. I think they've probably integrated it a little more now. And if not, when the floodgates open, I think they might be. Even though I do still think, and I have no foundation behind this, I do think they are picking certain subs to use that technology on. But that's just a theory and in no way, shape, or form confirmed. So back to what I was saying, they'll be getting millions upon millions of cards in the span of a few weeks. So it's going to be interesting to see the processing, how long that takes, how long the operation is streamlined, because if they can get past that first initial wave and keep it going well and not let it get far behind, then they can start to keep up. It's just working overtime. You're going to have to ignore some other levels for a couple weeks probably and send some more graders in to handle the regular when it happens. I don't know exactly how it's going to be, but it's the first time we're going to see how Nat's logistics are on PSA when handling a massive amount of cards. Because let's be honest, opening up Express wasn't exactly opening up the floodgates. Opening up regular now, will open up the floodgates quite a bit. As someone who does grading reviews and bulk submissions, I've already seen the amount of people that have started rushing their packages in to get them ready for that initial submission. And like I said, I already know for a fact millions that are headed their way. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how they handle that, and also what it does to the other grading companies. Companies like SGC, CSG, the million third-party grading companies that popped up. Sorry, guys, you guys are, this is about time where, you die, as they were counting on and they were getting all of PSA's lower-end stuff because PSA wasn't accepting submissions, but now that they are, goodbye million third-party graders that used up every three-letter acronym in the grading catalog, I swear. Not one of you could have tried 2, 5, 4, anything. All of them had to be 3. It drove me nuts. But they're gone. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with CSG initially and SGC. Now, I think SGC is going to be fine because they have a very dedicated customer base that is incredibly loyal to them, and they've been putting out a good product, and their prices have been rising quite a bit. I mean, I didn't even think to include BGS in this because they're so quiet and they have no services open. It's not going to take any business away from BGS because I don't think outside of their authentication department, which is doing amazing, I don't know how much they're even getting to grade. But CSG, it's probably going to take quite a bit away from them for a while. I still think they're going to be the grader of Fanatics in the future. So in 5 years, I think CSG is going to be right up there with PSA in terms of how many cards are submitted. Now, what it means with values, who knows? Which, side note, great news. CSG did announce they are redoing the label, so gone is that hideous label finally. So hold off sending to them if you do. But it's going to be interesting to see how much this takes away from them. If people go back to PSA that had left and now see $100 and say, okay, that's acceptable for the cards that I have, and how many of them choose to stay. Now, the real test on that is going to be when the price drop happens and regular drops back down to where it probably settles at between $60 and $75. That's what I would assume regular probably drops down to eventually. But, that's going to be the ultimate test on loyalty to those grading companies. But right now, they're going to be tested big, and it's going to be interesting to see how many people choose to go the PSA route as opposed to the SGC route, because the difference in amount of money to get them graded now with regular opening up is not that big when the return rate can sometimes be double, even though quite a few of these grading companies are catching up. So it's going to be very interesting, but PSA Regular is back open. But now, guys, we're going to move on to the segment that is taking the nation by storm. That's right, it used to be Let Her Rip, and now Let Her Rip's got its own show every Wednesday live. But taking its place in taking the nation by storm is the awesome Movers and Shakers. Alright, y'all, and for this week's edition of Movers and Shakers, we've got a combination of players from really multiple sports that are either already making that jump and making a massive move, and you better jump on that train before it's way too late, or are flying so far under the radar it's not even funny. And we're going to start off with a rookie in the NBA this year. Yes, I know there are rookies in the NBA this year, guys. I know no one's paying attention to any of them, but they are there. And his name is Scotty Barnes. Now, I know he plays in Toronto, and so that's going to have some effect on everything. But this kid is absolutely balling out. He's averaging 16.3 points a game. His three-point percentage is a little rough and a little bit desired for at 18.2%, but his field goal percentage is 51.2%, and he's shooting 80% free throws. So the kid's got an incredible shot. His mid-range and low game is absolutely amazing. He's also averaging 8 rebounds a game and almost 3 assists. This kid's going all out. He's had multiple 20-point games. He is going to be, along with Pascal Siakam, really the Raptors guys. And I know he doesn't get attention being up in Canada, but his cards are absolute and total steals. It makes no sense to me why his cards are where they are. You've got Chronicles Draft Gold Standard cards that are going for well under $1,000 that are numbered out of 10. You've got, I know a lot of the big NBA stuff isn't out yet, but some of his biggest cards and biggest autographs under $500. His Mosaic Scripts autograph out of 49 going for well under $500. I mean, it's crazy when you see what people are paying for other players in similar situations. Scotty Barnes is going to be the future of this Raptors team or one of these teams, and he is getting no attention in the hobby right now, as it's understandable, as there's another guy we'll be talking about here shortly, and a lot of NBA players that are playing great. But Scotty Barnes is flying way under the radar and is going to be an incredible star in this league. He has great command, and his cards have not caught up to his production yet. So get investing and grab some of those Scotty Barnes cards, because they are going to go up. He is going to be putting these numbers up, and they're only going to get better. His minutes are going up by game. He is going to continue this production. Hopefully he can continue getting his field goal percentage at 50 is great. Getting up to 60 would be amazing. Three-pointer, he needs to get that up. That's just crazy. But the rebounding stats, I mean, he's almost averaging a double-double, and no one's talking about him. So take a look at Scotty Barnes in Toronto, and, I mean, scoop him up quick. I mean, that's what I would do. On the opposite side of the spectrum, we've got a man whose cards are just skyrocketing through the roof, and it came out of nowhere, and that is Mr. Saquon Barkley. Now, the Giants may be finding their identity. They're a lot better than I thought they were, and Saquon's proving me wrong that he's still got plenty left in the tank. But his PSA 10 Prism in the last week has seen 157% change in growth. That means, I mean, it's absolutely incredible. His stuff is starting to go for a lot higher, and people are starting to hold them. There were a lot listed for very low prices that have now been pulled down. Or there are a lot that are going up on auctions that are ending around the next game that, you know, he's expected to have a big game in. People are playing this very smart and playing Saquon very smart right now, as he is someone that you are going to see on a weekly basis if he continues this production up throughout the rest of the year, as the Giants have actually surprised me a little bit. If he continues his production, these things are going to go up. But I think he's shown collectors. Remember, he was a big, heavy guy for a lot of people in this industry before all the new collectors got into it. Saquon was one of those last draft classes that were kind of secret to the hobby, so to speak. So there's a lot of people with a lot invested in Saquon that don't want to give up on him. And I think his production has shown those people that he is still there and he's still got it. And you're looking at a lot of change. You're looking at the fact that I saw so many listed available before, so many aren't listed now, and you see all the ones that are being sold at a tremendous height. They were steadily dropping for a while in the offseason, but as soon as it has started out and as soon as he started playing, they have started an upward trend, and in the last week, we have seen an absolute skyrocket in trends. So definitely take a look at Saquon Barkley's cards, autos, everything. I think you're going to see quite a big increase on Saquon. Next up, as always, I will tell you to, of course, grab Desmond Bain cards. Desmond Bain continues to play awesome. He is Ja Morant's number 2. These two just are going to have their third. They're going to create a massive team, and this Grizzlies team is going to go on a crazy roll in the next couple years. Desmond Bain is still too low, so jump all over Desmond Bain. He's going to rise along with Ja, just at a lower level. But moving on, back to football. Guys, we're in an era now where people are collecting way more than quarterbacks. It's in the NFL. It used to be quarterback or nothing. Wide receivers, everyone else got no love, no attention whatsoever. That is completely gone. And this change has just started this year, and it's happening, and I thought it was maybe a weekly thing, but it's not. It's been a 6-8 month thing. This is a trend that is happening, and with that in mind, there are two players that you need to be grabbing every single thing you can of them, and those are Jamar Chase and Trevon Diggs. Now, Jamar Chase, you guys know how I feel about Joe Burrow. The two of them together are going to do some magical things. I thought it might be T. Higgins. Sorry, buddy. I think you're going to be that number 2 who still has great success and gets to come along for the ride. But I think the connection that we're going to be seeing for a long time is Burrow to Jamar. That's what I'm looking at. That's what I see. I think this is going to be something incredible. Jamar Chase, for a guy who said that he was having trouble in the preseason catching footballs because they didn't have the white lines on him in the NFL, he's sure having no problem catching him in the pros now, and he seemed to have figured that out quickly. And Jamar Chase, his cards still low, but they're on that rise. Like I said, all these players I'm talking about, their cards are on that steady rise. So definitely Jamar Chase. And when it comes to Trevon Diggs, look, I know everyone says you're saying that because of his interception streak. No, that interception streak is amazing, but it's not by pure luck. That interception streak is by skill. Those interceptions are not flukes. That is him reading defense, making the right adjustments, and just being flat out better than the wide receivers he's matched up against. As someone that played corner and coaches defense, Trevon Diggs is a coach's dream. He sees the field so incredible, and he has the potential. Trevon Diggs does have the potential, just like his brother, to go down as one of the best of his era and possibly one of the best of all time at their positions. Trevon Diggs is someone incredibly special. Don't look for the streak to continue forever. He's going to have multiple games where he doesn't have one, but that's because the ball's not going to be thrown in his direction. He is someone that we haven't seen this dynamic since Revis in his prime, and I'd argue he's better than Revis in his prime. Now we're seeing people actually collect these guys. If Revis was doing what he was doing now, his cards would have been through the roof. And they were high back then for what they were. But now you're seeing a lot more than just quarterbacks because there's not enough quarterbacks and not enough quarterback cards to satisfy the amount of collectors there are. And collectors are finally starting to notice that there are other players on a football field. So grab these guys before they keep that upward climb. But that's going to do it for this week's edition of Movers and Shakers. And welcome back, everybody, to Let Me Get That Potograph. And on the line, he's a very special guest who's been on the show a couple times before, and always a pleasure to have him on. He is the owner of Just Collect and Vintage Breaks, Mr. Leighton Sheldon. What's up, man?
Not too much, Drew. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, I wanted to have you on for a couple of different reasons. There's a lot going on in the hobby, and we'll touch on that here in just a minute. But the first thing I want to touch on is the event that you guys have going on that actually ends tomorrow. Since this episode's dropping on a Thursday, it ends tomorrow at 10 p.m. But one thing that I've always loved about Vintage Breaks, since I've worked with y'all and done some things with you guys, is the creativity behind the events. It's not just spend some money and then that's it, you're in. There's always some flair to it, there's some uniqueness to it, and the event you have right now, I think personifies that more than anything, as it's one of the most unique and innovative events that I've seen in the hobby in quite some time. So tell everybody a little bit about what's going on right now with Vintage Break Squid Games.
Sure. So, everyone kind of became a big fan of the show here in the office. And so I won't spoil it for those who haven't seen it. but for those who have seen it, probably know a little bit what I'm talking about. It was very well written, and it was certainly an interesting premise. And so we were trying to capitalize on popular culture, if you will, and decided to roll that popularity into our next event. And for those of you who are not familiar with Vintage Breaks, approximately every 6 weeks or so, we have a big event. Then after our big event concludes, we generally run something called an after party bonus event, kind of like if you remember in college when the keg is kicked, right? But where do you go? You go to a late night, right? You find
you went to my house.
Late night. So it's that. Yeah, exactly. It's that kind of cycle that we've been enjoying, and so is our community. And so this particular one is the event, if you will, before our end of the year blowout. And we wanted to do something a little bit different as well as special for it. And so the way that we incorporated Squid Games into this event was basically taking what we do here at Vintage Breaks and gamifying, which we like to use that term a lot here with what we do with breaks, and taking it a step further by saying we have this $100,000 hit random, which is now sold out. And for those of you that did not see it on our website at vintagebreaks.com, it's 20 spots that were sold for $5,000 per spot. The floor is about $1,000, but the ceiling, for example, are some of the following items: a 1933 Gaudi Babe Ruth PSA 4. If that's not enough Babe Ruth for you, there's also a Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig signed baseball authenticated by PSA. There's also a Jackie Robinson Leaf rookie in a PSA 2. So it's really going to be quite wild. And we decided, and obviously, Drew, you can sometimes take your advertising budget and you can go spend it with Google, right? Or you can go spend it with Facebook.
Right.
But there's a lot of other ways to take an advertising budget and spend it. And so we thought, what better way to do that than we took one of the spots in this $100,000 hit random that costs $5,000 per spot, and we are giving it away for free. But the way that Squid Games kind of ties into all of this is, you never knew what was going to happen in the next round of Squid Games.
Right.
Nor did you know even exactly how to win. And so what we're doing, Drew, with this spot, we're running a promotion. And at this point, when this drops, it will be one more day left in it. But every day for the last 20 or so days, there was a way to get your name into that final ring, if you will, of 60 or so names that is going to be pulled from on the last day, i.e. tomorrow at approximately 9:30 Eastern time. We're going to have this final list of contestants, if you will, Squid Game style, that, there was a few each day. And then one winner will be drawn live in front of everyone that final night tomorrow. And that person could very well walk away with not only a free spot that was at $5,000 per spot, but you realize, Drew, they could literally win the 33 Gaudi Babe Ruth PSA 4. They could literally win a Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig signed baseball. And so
or the 34 Gaudi Gehrig that I saw that was in there.
It's kind of crazy that I forgot about it.
Incredible stuff in there.
So we wanted to bring people the opportunity in the hobby that, of course, we have plenty of folks who bought into our breaks, but we wanted to appeal to people, Drew, who maybe didn't hear of us before or had never bought into one of our breaks but had heard of us. We wanted to give them incentive, candidly, to follow us, to check us out. And we thought, what better way to do that than to have an innovative promotion mixed with something that's pop culture, and let's be honest, who doesn't love to win something for free that could be huge like this?
No, absolutely. And, I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk on it, even though, like I said, it is winding down now, because I just love the way it was done through social media, through so much interaction. It got a lot of conversation going throughout the community, which is something that Vintage Breaks is obviously very big on, and I know that you're very big on, is building that community aspect. And one thing that I noticed every day with your social media entry that you guys would do, that community came together together and not only would just answer the question to get the entry, but, you know, some great conversation was stirred through all of it. And so, guys, if you are interested and you do want to check it out right before it does end, go to event.vintagebreaks.com for all the information on that. But Leighton, I really wanted to have you on today because the hobby, you've been on the show a couple of times and we've talked since the hobby, like before the hobby blew up, as the hobby was blowing up, and as the hobby kind of took a little, you know, leveling out period, but haven't gotten a chance since the hobby kind of entered into the quote-unquote new era, if you will, since everything's gone down. And I know you've been in the industry for forever, since you were young, and have seen so many things come and go, so many trends in the hobby. You've seen some of the biggest events in the hobby go down. When you look at the hobby right now and where it's headed, what are the first thoughts that come to your mind? Because you're somebody that has really had your heart on the pulse of everything in the hobby, but you've had that for a long time.
Sure. No, I mean, listen, it's a great question. It's you know, it's tough to answer because it's very much, you know, a macro question. So would you like me to address, for example, the modern market, vintage, fanatics, or
sure? Let's touch on the fanatics and the modern market and where it's going with everything that's happened, because I think it ties into the vintage market well, which I'll touch on in just a moment.
Great. So let's talk about the market itself before we get into fanatics.
Absolutely.
And the first thing I'll say is, you know, the market's very strong, Drew.
Yes.
But I would absolutely be remiss if I did not mention that there has been a substantial impact on the ecosystem of modern cards because of the lack of the ability to grade, whether it be a base card, whether it be a few $100 card. I believe that we as an industry should be very proud that we've been able to get through this difficult time period where, you know, grading is not as readily accessible as it once was. Right. And the reason why I thought it was pertinent to start off with this is because, you know, everyone is saying like, well, the industry is just riding the coattails of COVID. And, you know, there's lots of things that are happening that we just quote unquote got lucky. And, you know, I would say there's plenty of things that we didn't get lucky.
Yeah.
You know, and so you're talking about the biggest expansion and growth period of the last 10 or 15 years and PSA shuts down. Like, I don't think that that's perfect.
No.
You know, and I'm not hating on NFTs, but the fact that NFTs have come out and have been a diversion for both attention as well as dollars allocated to some of, you know, our hobbies collectors, they're now they're re-looking at other places such as NFTs. Do I think that that's great? No, I don't think it's bad. But what I'm saying is it's not been all like flowers and roses. And yet we're still very, very strong and candidly like a tidal wave or moving forward. So I just think it's kind of interesting when everyone out there who maybe isn't as involved says, oh, well, you know, the industry is doing great because things are easy right now. I wouldn't describe them as easy. No. I think that certain parts of it have become easier because cards have gone up a lot in value.
Right.
But make no mistake about it, whether it be from a breaking standpoint and not just, of course, at Vintage Breaks, but I mean, for all breakers, I would think that all breakers would agree that we would prefer our customers have the ability to grade their cards as easily as possible so that they can turn their purchases into a revenue stream for themselves.
No, absolutely. And I mean, the grading definitely had a massive effect. The good news is if you're a PSA fan, it does look like they're catching up pretty fast, and some of the stuff is getting pretty fast again. So we might get some sort of normalcy back with that sometime soon, and hopefully a price decrease back to where it helps a little bit and that revenue stream can help. But no, I completely agree. It definitely, you know, it definitely wasn't all easy by far, but people saying that they're just jumping in just for something, you know, real quick or because of COVID and all that. Mark Cuban and these people and these big companies that are buying out a lot of these corporations and a lot of these companies that are getting into the market, they're not getting into something because of a virus. They're getting into it because they're doing their research. They know what they see the trends. They see, like you said, the tidal wave that's coming. I mean, I think we're on a think we're on a very strong turn in the market, even with the Fanatics deal. I think that'll alter things a little, like quite a bit, but I do think we're on just a very, very a strong uptick that maybe not is as sharp as when COVID and everything happened, 20 months ago or whenever it was, but definitely a steady increase in the overall modern hobby.
Yep, no, I agree with you. And as far as Fanatics goes, I mean, everyone's guess is as good as mine.
Right.
I know there, at least from the rumblings that I hear, there is some fear out there as to, Fanatics is going to try to control the entire pipeline, the entire ecosystem. And for me, as someone who is both entrenched in the vintage market and to a certain extent the modern market, I'm not as worried as some of the naysayers, because some of the people that are involved, like you mentioned, Mark Cuban or whoever else it may be, Josh Luber, the co-founder of StockX, and Michael Rubin from Fanatics. These are folks who have made a lot of money by doing what they believe was the right thing to do in their respective space. They didn't do it by scalping people. They didn't do it by burning bridges. They didn't do it by screwing people over. And so, the thought or the notion, Drew, that folks like that are putting in, I mean, you're not even talking millions, it's tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And obviously in the case of Fanatics, it's potentially billions. The point is that I don't believe that on the one hand, are they sitting there and saying, hey, what can we do to make every single customer happy and not care about our bottom line? Like, I don't believe they're doing that. At the same time, I also don't believe they're asking themselves, how can we wring the most we can out of every customer,
right,
and therefore, leave nothing on the table for anyone, and destroy the hobby that we're getting into? No, I don't think that that's the case. I think that they're going to be strategic. They're a for-profit business, right? So they are going to try to turn a profit, but I think they're going to do so with the long term, in mind. And I think that although there may be parts of it, for example, like I don't own a card shop. And I'm not trying to say that card shop owners should be worried, but I would say at the very least, it would pique my interest and I'd be concerned, because if I'm someone who has had allocation for a number of years and that's leading to a number of my profits at the company, that could change.
Absolutely. If you're a card shop and you're not engaging in some type of breaking and eBay selling, I would definitely be worried, a little more concerned than those that aren't. But speaking of vintage, this is something that I've thought about quite a bit since the Fanatics deal was announced. Obviously, we don't know. There's so much up in the air, and like you said, everyone's guess is good as mine, yours, anyone else, on what exactly Fanatics is going to do and how everything's going to shake out. But the one thing that's already shaken out is the vintage market. The cards are there and the collectors are there. When Fanatics takes over, whether they're wildly successful or this is something that changes the hobby, for the worse, who knows? What are your thoughts on the vintage market when it comes to the Fanatics deal? Because I kind of look at this as a lot of people, maybe not the majority of the hobby, but some of the hobby giving Fanatics a little bit of a pushback and going to cards that were around before the Fanatics deal took over, the golden age, so to speak, of the hobby, and going back towards vintage and some cards that will have been vintage, by then, and maybe some stuff that isn't qualified as vintage, but late 90s stuff with older and older stuff as opposed to the brand new stuff. How do you think the vintage market's going to be affected by the Fanatics takeover, so to speak?
Sure. Well, let me first say that, for full disclosure, I own a lot of vintage cards.
Of course.
So this is coming from someone that absolutely has a vested interest to see the vintage market do well. And so I just wouldn't want your audience who's listening at some later date thinking this is coming from someone who doesn't have a position in the market. So, as far as vintage goes, you bring up an interesting point about Fanatics and when they come, into the space, like, will people flock to vintage? This is what I really think. If you kind of back up for a minute, like, what is a human being's psyche? What do they want? And in general, I don't really care if it's baseball cards or Barbie dolls, but generally, like, we want the best.
Right.
And so, if you, for example, like Drew, I don't know how much art you own. I don't own very much art, but I certainly know of the Mona Lisa, and I know there's only one, and I know it's basically priceless, right?
Right.
And so I guess my point is, on the one hand, am I concerned with Fanatics and what they may or may not do with all of their power? Absolutely. On the other hand, and you're going to see how this is going to tie to vintage, I think that no matter what happens, as long as Fanatics brings in more customers, and that I'm convinced they will, because there's no way they can do the numbers they're doing with the existing user base. They need more customers.
Right.
And they themselves have said we have 80 or 90 million people at our fingertips to email that are avid sports fans. So this is my point. Imagine just 10% of the Fanatics user base wanting to come in. So this is 8 million new users. And let's just say of those 8 million new users, almost every one of them is enamored with Modern at some given point early in the process. This is where I'm going with it. Drew, I don't know when, but at some point, just like people who know nothing about the art world, myself included, know the Mona Lisa is the best, people who enter the hobby through the Fanatics gateway are ultimately going to know that Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky, not only were the best of all time, but they don't have any cards made by Fanatics. So in order to buy the best cards, they're going to have to go backwards and look at vintage.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And like you said, if only we can get just that little bit of a percentage, that's a massive increase into an already growing steadily hobby. But that's something that I hadn't really thought about. Eventually, just like when I got back into the hobby, I mean, I knew who the players were because I grew up a sports fan. But the cards and everything like that, vintage wasn't my game. But now I consider myself quite knowledgeable in it. So you're right. I think that's probably what's going to happen, and I think it's what happens to a lot of people when they get into the hobby. So before I let you go, there's one other thing I wanted to talk to you about, and that is one of the shows on Vintage Breaks. We do a lot of different content on there, but one new show that you have is Trading Card Therapy with yourself, Dr. Leighton Sheldon, should I say, PhD. But you've got a show called Trading Card Therapy. Explain to everybody a little bit about what it is, because I've been watching it since it started, and it's become one of my favorite shows out there.
Well, thanks, Drew. So folks can find us every Wednesday at 1:30 Eastern Time for the live version of Trading Card Therapy. We do it on IG. We do it on the Just Collect YouTube channel. But then on Fridays, we drop wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts, so on Apple or Spotify, any of those good platforms. You can actually get our Trading Card Therapy podcast from the podcast universe and download it there and listen to it. But ultimately, what Trading Card Therapy is, Drew, I myself am someone who not only loves the hobby, but also am immersed in it and listen to content. And the more and more I've been listening to content, I thought that a unique angle I could bring to the space was to kind of peel that curtain back and allow you into some of the daily life and going-ons of a vintage professional baseball card treasure hunter such as myself.
Right.
And so I talk to people about anything and everything from road trips to buy a collection and what that looked like and how we prepared. Because a lot of people, for example, they'll see a collection that someone bought on Facebook or on social media and they'll brag about it, but there's no context and there's no perspective. Like you didn't just, price all that stuff out in your head. You didn't just happen to stumble upon it. And so I feel like people, the way that they've been consuming our blog at justcollect.com/blog for a number of years, I'm kind of bringing some of those stories to life, but they're not just stories of collections. For example, this past weekend, I went to the Shriner show. So Trading Card Therapy from yesterday, I talked about my experience both preparing for the show, going to the show, and then leaving the show, not just about the cards themselves, but about the people, about the food, anything and everything having to do with the experience. Right. And so, from there, I'll talk about bidding in auctions, giving advice about consigning to auctions, how to negotiate the best rates and what kind of stuff to give to an auction house. But all in all, if you think about it, it's all having to do with giving therapy, i.e. advice, and my own experience from, everything that I deal with, from being a 20-year veteran in the hobby. I bought and sold nearly $50 million of vintage cards, and obviously some modern cards in there. And then on the breaking side, have done a fair amount of breaks in the last number of years, and just feel that if you can bring that experience to a user in an audio format. And even though we have the live video as well, and you can actually watch it on YouTube, a lot of people like this format from the standpoint of, being able to have that peek into, that window or behind the curtain to something that people enjoy thoroughly doing, which is buying and selling cards.
No, absolutely, and that's one thing that I do love about the show is the many different topics and things that you touch on. You never really know where the show's going to go, and I really enjoy that because, like I said, you've been doing this for so long now. And one of the best phrases that I'd heard and on one of my favorite episodes, and it's something that we get a lot of new listeners that are listening to the show now and that may not understand it and everything, but one of my favorite things that you said was that the making money on a purchase is on the buy, not the sell. And that was one of the most beautifully put phrases. A great example of some of the stuff that you can take away from trading card therapy as well.
Yeah, and I appreciate it, Drew. I remember that episode.
Absolutely. So if you had to give new collectors, which as I mentioned, we have quite a few of them, collectors and investors in this industry. What is the best advice that you could give them in terms of starting out, or maybe stuff that they're doing in terms of getting into this industry?
Sure. I think first and foremost, no matter what dollar level you're at as far as budget, I would try to buy the best quality that I could afford. So even if you're someone who likes to have a lot of cards versus having one or two, I'm not saying you're wrong, but just understand that when it comes to liquidating, for example, it's a lot easier to sell one or two cards than it is 20 or 30. And then when it comes to reselling, I do believe this, if you buy quality, someone else is going to appreciate that quality that you bought. If you buy quantity, I can't guarantee you someone else is going to appreciate the quantity that you bought the same way that they would have appreciated if you bought good quality.
Very, very, very well put. So there you go, trading card therapy once again every Wednesday. But Leighton, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show, man. Before I let you go, I know you guys got a busy evening ahead of you. Let everybody know that isn't familiar with Vintage Breaks where they can find you and everything like that that's going on.
Absolutely. So if you folks are interested in checking out our breaking company, we have over 300 breaks for sale, a lot of fun bonuses. Check us out at vintagebreaks.com. If you're interested in finding out more information about vintage cards, or may even want to your collection or all of it, you can hit me up on our website at justcollect.com. And if you'd like to follow us on Instagram, I'm on Instagram at Leighton_Sheldon. And you can follow Vintage Breaks on Instagram at vintage.breaks.
There you go. Well, Leighton, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Good luck with everything, and we'll be talking soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Drew.
And once again, I'd like to thank Leighton Sheldon for coming on the show. Always fun when he comes on. He has so much knowledge on this industry. I mean, he's literally been involved in this industry since he was a kid, all the way through adulthood. His knowledge on the hobby, both vintage and modern, is quite impressive. And he's seen it all. He's seen the ups and downs, the rises, the falls, the different trends, the need to pivot. I mean, running two businesses, Just Collect and Vintage Breaks, he's pivoting all the time. So, great to have Leighton on. Always a pleasure. But definitely go check out vintagebreaks.com. And really cool story regarding Squid Games is this was recorded a couple of days before Squid Games ended. The winner of that bonus spot where they got the entry into the giveaway, the person that won that spot ended up getting the number one spot in the big hit random. So the free entry spot, the daily entry spot that we were talking about and you saw through promotion on Let Me Get That Potographs pages throughout the week, a person who won that daily spot ended up getting the very first spot and then walking away with I believe, over $20,000 card. Just absolutely incredible. And one of those awesome hobby stories that just makes the hobby so cool. You can get in for free. You can get in for $100 and walk away with thousands and thousands of dollars. The hobby has so many cool stories, but I thought it was awesome that the person who ends up getting the biggest spot is in one of those fun contests contests. That's why, guys, enter in the contests you see, the giveaways that we do for Let Her Rip. A lot of people don't enter them, and I don't understand. It takes 5 seconds, and you could walk away with some awesome stuff. It happens all the time. Not as many people enter as you would think. So, always take a shot. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Michael Scott. But before we wrap up today's show, I wanted to touch on the soccer market again. We talked about the license, the EPL license going with Panini again, but I saw this week the phrase that I had been waiting to see. Now, I had talked about on this show for multiple weeks months now, almost probably a year, about how important the soccer market was, and when the World Cup came around, the soccer market was going to go bananas. Well, if you look at the soccer market, it is trending upward in a serious direction. Not only rookie cards, but veteran colors, lots of different cards, lots of inserts, short prints, lots of things that you wouldn't expect because soccer's a little different. As we didn't have a ton of rookie cards for a lot of these guys that are attainable anymore or even out there. A lot of them just ended up in products, and so you're seeing a lot of these 2021 products, 2017, 2018 products really start to ramp up. But this is only the beginning, and I say that because this week Panini, in their marketing, used the phrase that I had been waiting to see, and they use it all the time, and it signals the beginning of the soccer market frenzy. Now, the soccer market always had this tiny little frenzy, but this year is going to be like no other, and that phrase is the road to the World Cup. Get used to seeing it. You will see it everywhere. The road to the World Cup. It is being put on sell sheets, everything for soccer. That means the World Cup promotion has started, and here we go. The soccer market is about to take off. It's already steadily started to climb since that phrase was first uttered. I looked at, sales of current things. People wait for that. They know it starts to remind them in their head, oh shoot, I need to grab it now. So this is when a lot of FOMO starts. This is when a lot of movement starts. This is when a whole lot starts that causes a market to go up. It's going to start slowly, and it's going to move pretty steadily, and then it's going to drastically increase. Get in on this soccer market. Get in on it. It is not just these new rookies that could be huge. Yes, I know Haaland's not playing in the World Cup. That stinks, but guess what it also does? It gives a ton of other players a lot of attention. A lot of people are going to spread the money they would have spent on Haaland on other players because they're not just going to sit there and not do anything with it. The soccer market is about to experience something that I think the hobby is going to see, and it's going to be a ritual. When the World Cup comes around, people know it, and I think it's going to bring the soccer market overall, all those different leagues we talked about earlier and all those different licenses, I think it's going to shoot it to the moon because you're going to see players, which, like I've been saying, look at the World Cup, go look at the previews, go look at the teams that have a chance in the World Cup, the teams that people think may have a chance of winning and all that stuff. Look at those teams, figure out which ones, okay, yeah, this guy plays here, who's playing on him, find the stars, go after that stuff. Going after that is the smartest thing you could do right now, as the soccer market is primed for just an absolute explosion with the words road to the World Cup being announced, and trust me, you are going to see it on every soccer release moving forward. And speaking of big sales and potential big sales, man, just because the baseball season's over, it sure doesn't mean the the collecting is over. And even though Ronald Acuna had nothing to do with the Braves winning the World Series, at least outside of, early in the year before he got hurt, collectors sure are taking notice, as Ronald Acuna actually set a record as his 2017 Bowman Chrome Prospects Autograph Purple Refractor at a 250. It's a PSA 10 with a Pop 16, was sold for $10,000 via best offer on My Slabs. And previously the card had sold for $7,000 in May of this year. So 6 months ago, it's up 41%, and he's been hurt. That shows me that a lot of collectors are really banking on Acuna, and a lot of investors are really banking on Acuna to come back next year and do something special. Because, I mean, this is, I know it's the Braves and it's right after the World Series, and maybe that has something to do with it. But Ron Acuna was down for a while, and it looks like people now, they're not waiting. They're not letting the offseason really take place. They're not letting all the parades and everything even fully settle down, and people even get their World Champion shirts in the mail before they start trying to snag up some of the lower stuff in the offseason and setting record sales in the process. And that's one of his purple refractors at a 250. Purple normally not being known for one of the more popular Bowman colors. You know, obviously Pop 16 helps, but being at a 250, that surprises me. Hitting 10,000 on my slabs, which you know has such low fees, that's a very, very solid come through for the seller. So congratulations to the seller. But Ron Acuna stuff seems to be moving quite a bit, and doesn't look like the baseball hobby's going to have an off season whatsoever. But y'all, this is going to wrap up another episode of Let Me Get That Potograph. But before we do, I do want to announce that I dropped another new show. We have another new show entering the DH entertainment aspect of the DH sports cards, and that is The Hobby in 60. It's a completely different show than ever before. There's no time frame. It could be multiple episodes, day after day. It might be 3 days between episodes. It might be a week. It might be 5 days. It could be a couple hours. You never know. It's a very simple concept, 60-second episodes. Everything you need to know, no BS, no bullshit, just The Hobby in 60. So make sure you check it out. It's on all Let Me Get That Potograph platforms, the YouTube, everything, just not on the app's actual podcast platforms, but on all the social medias. So make sure to check that out, and our new TikTok that we did launch to put these on as well. So The Hobby in 60, joining Let Her Rip, Let Me Get That Potograph, and everything else in the DH Entertainment family. But that is going to do it for episode 129 of Let Me Get That Potograph. Once again, I have to thank my awesome sponsors: Vintage Breaks, Vanity Slabs, Walk-Off Card Submissions, Card Ladder, and of course iHeartMedia / Spreaker. Without you guys, we could not do these shows, so thank you guys so much for everything and the support that you guys give the show. We would not be, like I said, we would not be able to do this without you. The support means everything, and it is greatly appreciated. But guys, we will be back next week with an all-new episode, and until then, you know what to do. Keep ripping those packs, pulling those hits, and we'll talk to you next week. Peace!